Hello everyone, in today's video, I will show you how to create this watercolor style famous Korean candy called Dalgona in Procreate. I will show you from start to finish, showing my favorite techniques to create this delicious candy to life. Watch till the end where I show you some fun tricks to have some fun with this candy. All the brushes and the canvases I'm going to be using will be linked in the description below, including the free sketch and color palette to get you started. For today's piece, I'll be working with the rough groove texture canvas, but feel free to use any of your favorite canvases as you like. I have already imported the sketch here. You can start with a blank canvas, but if you're a beginner and need some guidance, you can import the sketch and trace around it. So open up the Layers tab, and we're going to press on this N button. There we can reduce the opacity, so it'll be easier for us to trace over. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. And I like to use my Sketch 2B pencil. And I like to keep the opacity around 55% and size to around 20%. So if you want to do a perfect circle, a lot easier rather than doing multiple circles at a time, we're going to use the Quick Shape tool. We're going to draw a circle by holding down the pencil with the screen. Procreate may interpret your initial drawing as an oval instead of a circle. But if we use our other finger on the canvas after we draw the shape, Procreate will snap it into a perfect circle. Once we have the perfect circle, we can let go of the pencil. We can increase the size or reduce it, but we're going to leave it as it is at this point. For this demonstration, I'll be using the star design. And here's a quick tip. If you're having difficulties drawing a straight line, rather than using our wrist for movements, we're going to use our entire arm. This will allow for smoother, longer strokes, which will be essential for drawing straight arches and curves. As you progress and become more efficient, understanding the better ranges of your wrist and your arms, you can achieve polished results by reducing the physical strain of your practices. And just like this, we're going to move together with our arms rather than moving our wrist alone. And don't forget the needle on the side on the left here. If you find these tutorials helpful, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, so you'll be notified when new videos are released. Now there are some other shapes, just like the triangle, which is a lot easier. It only has 3 straight lines and 3 corners. And also the famous umbrella design. You can try all the designs yourself, and the techniques I'm going to show you can be utilized with all the designs. So back to our star. Since we finished the sketch, now we can begin the painting process. Make sure we create the layer underneath the sketch so we can see the sketch when we're painting underneath the watercolor texture canvas effect. And as you can see, I have already imported the color palettes here, which is going to make it easier for you to follow along. So we'll start off with this light orange color. And now we're going to pick wet on dry brush, keeping the opacity and the size at 100%. And we'll start with the circle in the middle. And then we're going to create a new layer and pick the second tone color, yellow-orange color. And we're going to paint just around the light tone color that we just made. One of the reasons why I wanted to do a full tutorial on this Korean candy is because many of you have asked for the full tutorial after I released a short video of the umbrella, which as of right now has been viewed over 2.5 million times on YouTube, Instagram, and other social media platforms. When I was a kid, I remember buying them and carving out the designs. And if you were able to carve out the design without damaging it, you would get another candy. And I guess the artist in me wanted to carve all the shapes so I can get the unlimited amount of candy for life. And at this point, it wasn't really about getting more candy, but mainly focusing on the joy of carving them out. I know that this candy has become very popular due to the TV series Squid Games, and I know that season 2 just came out, and I'm looking forward to watching it. Now back to the painting. Once we have completed the 2-tone colors, we're going to combine them with using our fingers and pinching them together like this. And now we're going to use the moving blender and keep the size to around 30%. And we're going to start from the top and go all the way around, blending them together like this. As a fun gift, my sister actually gave me a starting kit to create and shape this candy. But not going to lie, it was actually very difficult to even make the candy, let alone the carving out the shapes. So rather than burning myself making the candy, I decided to make it on Procreate. Now once we finish the blending process, we're going to create a new layer. And pick this third tone color that's a little bit darker. And we're going to pick the rough wash brush from our line and wash watercolor brush set. And now we're going to create some depth and value. So keeping the opacity 100% and size 100%, and we're going to go around the shape of the designs, just like this. It's important to add some depth as the candy is now stamped with this design, giving some grooves and dark shadowing effect. We can reduce the opacity to around 50% to create some more values on the corners. And since the light's coming from the left, I'm going to keep it a little bit light on the right side. And now we're going to combine the two. And now we're going to pick the fast blender, keeping the size around 30%. And we're just going to quickly blend them just like this. Now we're going to create a new layer and pick this dark tone color of the brown, taking the embossing tool, keeping the size to around 30% and 100% opacity. This brush gives a nice concentrated pigment in the center and creates the illusion of depth, perfect for creating that stamped deep look. So use the same technique that we did before, drawing with our entire arm and going around the design. And now we're going to create some wet on dry effect. I'm going to create a new layer and pick this light brown tone color using the rough hard edge brush, keeping the opacity around 40% and size at 100% size. As you can see, it's giving a nice hard edge effect, focusing on the areas where we added darker pigments. And we can increase the opacity a little bit more, around 50%, where we'll create more depth as the stamp has been put in. The center of the candy will be a little bit lighter because the molding process allows the pressure to spread outward, giving the outer parts slightly denser and darker look as it cools faster and caramelizes more. Now, since the surface of the candy is smooth as it caramelizes, it's going to give that nice shiny glass look. And we'll try to mimic that by creating a new layer and picking a white tone color and use the gouache brush, keeping the opacity to around 50% and size around 30%. And since the light source is coming from the left, we're going to focus on the left here, giving a nice glossy look. And since the center of the design is going to be slightly raised, it's going to have some light reflection too. And then the bottoms and also on the inside of the right side. And since the light's coming from the left still, the right side is going to have some grooves and uneven textures, so it's going to reflect some of that light, but we're going to reduce the opacity to around 20%. Now let's not forget the needle on the left side. So we're going to create a new layer and pick this light gray tone color and use a fine line brush, keeping the opacity at 100% and size 100%. So we can start from the bottom here, looping around, leaving a slight hole in the center here, and going all the way at top and flicking it to give that nice sharp edge of the needle. And pick the second tone color to give another depth of the bottom piece here, just like this, and flick up. And let's not forget to add a little bit of shine from the needle, as it is a metal texture with a smooth surface, keeping the opacity the same for 50%, giving a nice glossy look. Now to make the image a bit more realistic, we can add some shadowing effect. So create a new layer at the most bottom piece, and we're going to pick the dark blue tone. And now we're going to pick wet on dry brush, keeping the opacity at a 30% and size 100%. And as you can see here, we're going to start from the right side because the light source is coming from the left, showing that the candy is slightly raised and not so flat. Same thing with the needle on the left. Going to add some shadows on the left here. To give that realism, I want to add some nice cracked areas here. We can start from the top new layer and pick the start tone color and use the fine line brush, keeping the opacity and size 100%. And we can start from any corner just like this and just wiggling around, giving some unpredictable lines all the way to the insides like this. And now we can use the eraser tool, using the same brush, fine line brush, to erase some of the pigments like this, giving that cracking effect. Having the opening a little bit bigger on the corners, and as we progress inside, it's going to have lesser cracks. And we're going to pick another mid-tone color to give a bit more depth, to give the illusion that the candy is being cracked, but there is some dimension of the candy looking upwards from our angle. Now, since the candy is cracked, we're going to add some candy crumbs. So pick this light orange tone color that we started with earlier and put some mini little pieces out on the side. And then we're going to pick this mid-tone color, reducing the opacity to around 50% and putting it on the right side to give a bit more depth. And now use the regular blender, keeping the size to around 5% and slightly blending them like this, flicking them left and right. And since we made the shadows before, we're going to add the shadows here as well. Pick this wet on dry brush again, keeping the size to around 10% and the opacity to around 55%, and focusing on the right side. And don't forget to add some shadows on the inside of the cracked areas, like this. Another fun trick that we can do on Procreate is slowly separating the candy pieces. So select the main layer after we've combined all the layers together. And now we're going to pick the lasso tool on the top left corner, use freehand, and start it from the top corner. Work your way around the design. Connecting the dots from all the way around, using our 3 fingers, swiping down, and click on cut and paste. What that will do is we'll cut the patterns, and as you can see, we can remove that piece from the original piece that we created. So we'll keep it slightly separated as a reference to we can connect the other ones. We're going to separate it into 3 pieces. So I'm going to work on the bottom piece. So the same thing, we're going to cut around the bottom piece like this and connecting the dot again, which will complete the process. 3 fingers down and cut and paste. This will separate the bottom piece now. And the last piece is the main focus here. And rather than giving a nice clean cut, we'll give it a little twist at the end where we cut it where the piece of the design comes off together. We cut around, loop around, using our 3 fingers again, cut and paste. And now we have 3 pieces that we created that we can slightly maneuver them to be perfectly aligned with another and begin the process of separating them like this. Just a fun and quick tutorial for you guys to try out. If you enjoyed this tutorial, and want to continue painting with me, click on the next video and I'll see you there.